Right, let's talk about Trump's latest executive order. He has signed an order banning males from women's sports, essentially in federally funded sports, so that's mostly schools and universities. But he's also planning to get various athletics associations to change the rules. It could even affect the LA Olympics. He wants to urge the IOC to change their rules, and he's even promised to ban athletes who, as he puts it, fraudulently claim to be women when they are men. Now, Ella, one of the striking things about this was, first of all, the clarity of the language. He doesn't mince his words. He doesn't say trans women. He says men. And the second thing is, like, how has it fallen to Donald Trump to be the defender of women and girls' sports? That it shouldn't have come to this.
Yeah, it's a remarkable announcement about something that should be so unremarkable. That you have, particularly in schools, that you have a very clear distinction between boys and girls and the things that they do differently in sport. And, you know, he likes to put on a good show. When he was signing the executive order, he's in this room surrounded by all these girls who are, you know, waiting to applaud him at the right time and everything. But, you know, the thing is, it's a bit different to in this country because, you know, PE is something that we're all forced to do. And in America, sport in schools is a massive deal. You know, it can lead on to, you know, lots of kids use it to get into college on scholarships and things like that. It's a really big thing and has been, you know, quite significantly affected by the introduction of the trans issue of primarily of allowing boys who are, you know, maybe they genuinely are wanting to be trans, but a lot of the time feeling sorry about the fact that they're low down in the league tables in the male category, who then try to become the hero in the female category because obviously they can run faster, jump higher, blah, 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 all the rest of it than all the girls. And it's, you know, if you care about sport, which it has to be said, I don't very much, but but if it is your passion and your talent and you are a young girl who wants to be the, you know, Olympic champion in swimming or anything else, it's soul destroying to know that you're not able to do that because you're constantly, you know, fairness is non-existent. So it's just kind of a no-brainer, but it is revolutionary at a time when America, you know, under the Biden administration and previous administrations had allowed some, you know, dramatic changes in relation to not just sport, but also in education, but, you know, dramatic changes to the way in which kids in particular engage with sports. So, you know, you don't have to be a fan of Trump. I'm not to know that this is just a kind of common sense move. And I think it will, that the interesting thing will be how it will be received in America, because I have a feeling that even the most sort of liberal right on parents out there will have been pissed off by the fact that their little girl wasn't able to get on. So it could be very popular.
I think so. I think it feels to me like one of the biggest or easiest, sorry, I should say, one of the easiest political wins in history. Just an absolute open goal, to use a sporting metaphor. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of an issue, including immigration, where what you might call the radical progressive elite are so out of touch with mainstream opinion, so out of touch with it on this issue that I think most ordinary people just cannot get their heads around the fact that this type of thing was ever allowed to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
That biological men were ever allowed to compete in women's sports, and that certain authorities, governing bodies of particular sports, turned a blind eye to it and actively encouraged it in some cases, and are still doing so in this country and in other countries. And I'm really not a fan of Trump. I don't like the man as a human being at all, I have to say. But credit where it's due. This is an entirely sensible move, and I think one that ought to be followed, and probably in the long term probably will be followed when common sense returns in a lot of countries. And I think probably we will at some point in the future look back in horror actually at the idea that we did ever let this go on, that it happened because, let's face it, a radical and vocal and politically motivated minority managed to persuade governments and institutions to follow them into fantasy land. That's the truth of it. We would never have allowed this to happen when it came to any other biological characteristic. We would never have allowed people who were not of that biological characteristic to appropriate it for their own ends. And yet women and girls were supposed to go, that's fine. You know, the concept of womanhood is really no more. If you want to be a woman on the basis of your subjective emotions, then that's fine. You're one of us. It's appalling that civilized society has ever allowed that sort of thing to happen. So it's something that Trump has got right.
Yeah, you never. I mean, you don't get people identifying as disabilities, or not yet.
Well,
I mean, the
exactly.
Paralympics never got touched. I don't want to invite it, but there's also this.
Well, adults identifying as children. Or something, you know.
Yeah.
What was that?
I think one of the interesting things for sport will be how to deal with, and there's lots of female sports women who are sort of calling for clarity around this, about what you do with the. It's quite clear what you do with the men who are pretending to be women, but what do you do with the people who have the complicated biological makeup, which there are quite a few cases, and there have been in the Olympics, there have been in football. And, I'm thinking about all the old articles that Mick Hume ever wrote for Spiked about the Olympics, and how, the exciting thing about elite levels of sport is that it involves a level of freakishness. People are freakishly tall and freakishly fast, and that's the brilliant thing, that there is a kind of a difference. But it's how you institute some kind of test, some kind of policy that just clearly, line in the sand says, this is the acceptable level of difference that will, and then this is where you cross a line and it becomes too much like a male body in a women's area of sport. And that takes some guts doing that. I mean, it's one thing signing an executive order, but dealing with that issue, which I think is a lot of where the whole kind of unfairness in sport thing happens, will be the next step. And I think it's going to be a really interesting area to watch.